safety, I thought, when he arrived on the show. So how you doing this morning?
Good. Feeling a little bit nicer out there, sun shining.
You had a cold yet?
Not yet. Why do you have to say that?
Well, it's been going around the building here.
I'll be calling you.
It's been a couple of years, I think, since I had one.
Yeah.
I've been pretty good at staving them off.
Well, if your cell phone rings, you see my name come up, you might not want to answer it.
It didn't happen this time around, though. In any event, this is the number one fire time, is it not, the holidays?
Yes. Winter season in general.
That makes sense. We have heating elements and all that.
Yeah, a lot of it's the heating. A lot more going on indoors, but heating is a big part of it.
The space heaters, is that a biggie?
Space heaters, wood stoves, fireplaces. Anytime you have fire, live flame inside of a building, there's a chance that something could go wrong.
Yeah, spark and spit out and catch the carpet on fire.
Yep, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Now, granted, there's a lot of structures in the world, and there's a lot of them. They're all being heated in this area, so it's not like they just spontaneously combust and we have fires all the time. But it's pretty common cause this time of the year to trace it back to something to do with heating.
It seemed like there were a lot around Thanksgiving. I don't know about here specifically, but in the area. Yeah,
it's been, unfortunately, a pretty active fire season this fall. Nothing really to pinpoint, not a pattern, just kind of how it goes sometimes. You get a bunch of them, then you go for a spell where you don't have a lot, and that's what we're shooting for.
Well, they say around Thanksgiving, kitchen fires are the top one.
Well, cooking, because, there's a lot of cooking, and we see a lot of the precautions on the deep fat frying of the whole turkey and what can go wrong there. I don't think we had anything here in town major to do with cooking and fires.
That's good.
Yes.
Must mean you're getting the message out.
Well, yeah, there are always accidents when they happen, but most accidents are avoidable, so education's the big key.
Before we go to some more safety tips, I'm sure you want to talk about our warning system here. You got everybody signed up yet?
Everbridge?
Yes.
Everybody? No. We're always looking for more. We don't have a very high percentage of people signed up to the Everbridge warning system. We encourage everybody to do that. It's used for multiple types of emergency or non-emergency warnings. Those that live in town get it a lot in the winter for snow emergencies. You can go onto the Rice County or the City of Faribault website, look for Everbridge, and get signed up. It's a free service, and we put out anything from weather warnings to criminal spree activity to, again, snowbird, snow plowing things. So it's a very good system. It comes across on your cell phone as a text, phone call, or email, or all the above. You can set it up how you want.
So if you had a hazmat, for example, a hazardous materials incident, that would be.
Yep, we can
be notified that way.
We can use the Everbridge system, and another. I heard earlier talking about iPause, and Jennifer was talking about the integrated public alerting and warning system. That's a bigger part, but that's also integrated in with Everbridge, where we can get out a quick message if a hazmat or anything that we need to alert the public to real quickly, real fast. We have that ability. iPause, the nice thing about that is if you have a smartphone, you have it already. You don't have to sign up. Everbridge, you need to opt in. You need to sign up.
I often think about the amount of hazardous materials that must come down I-35 here, right by us.
It's one of our, when we do a risk analysis of things that could go wrong in our area, with 35 and 60 and the rail going right through town, there hazardous material accident is pretty high on the list. Thankfully, all those means of transporting are fairly safe, so we don't have them a lot. But when we do have them, they tend to have a lot of consequences. There's a big risk there, so we have to plan for them.
All right, we've got some fire safety tips coming up in the next segment of our show, but it's another anhydrous ammonia tanks. And we could see that happening someday. And
it has happened. I've been on them. Yep. Thankfully, the wind comes up and they drift off and blow away and keep everybody
potentially
away.
Very dangerous.
Yes, yeah. Ammonia, if you've ever even gotten close to it, you know what that does to you. It overtakes you and overwhelms you pretty quickly.
So, where do we want to start, Dusty? Do you want to start with the fire, or you want to touch on ice safety, or?
Well, we can start with ice safety. Obviously, this is a time of the year that always makes me nervous because, especially this year, we had ice and it goes and comes and goes. It just needs to freeze up already, will ya? It is kind of what I say when I go by a pond or a lake. So we need to stay away from any of those ponds, even though it's been cold here lately. I've noticed finally now today it looks like the ponds and the wetlands I've went by are froze over, but I'm guessing there's not very much ice there. It's not safe enough to be on yet. I haven't been out by a lake yet, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
If I'm guessing they're partially froze.
But just walking on your sidewalk outside, outside your own sidewalk can be dangerous.
Falls, we've went on a few falls here lately. This ice, this last storm we had that created a lot of hazardous conditions for getting around.
Rain, and then the sleet, and then the snow.
Warm ground, the snow falls and it melts. It makes ice from below. So, be careful driving. One thing we see quite a bit, Troy Dunn and I had a little experience with this the other day, is if you can't get going, you're on an icy hill or something, giving it a lot of gas and really going is not helpful.
No.
It just makes ice underneath those wheels. So you got to try something different than just giving it the gas.
A little cat litter or something.
Cat litter, or get some help. We stopped and pushed a gentleman up a hill. It didn't take much to push, but you just can't give it more gas and hope that it helps. It's actually worse.
Yeah. Same thing when you get stuck in a ditch.
Yep. When you're stuck, you're stuck. Don't wreck anything. You risk overheating the car or getting something hot and the possibility of a fire. So just, you can try a couple times because we all will. And if you have four-wheel drive, you can try in four-wheel drive. If you get going, fine. But once you're spinning, you're done.
Yep, the old rocking method.
Yep, turning the wheel back and forth. There's a few things you can do, but stay off. You can't fall through the ice if you are not on the ice. So we're talking lakes. Don't go out on the lakes yet. It's too early.
With anything?
With anything.
So you're saying don't walk too?
I wouldn't walk on them yet. There's always some, blanket statement. If you walk, if you want to walk, if you live on a lake and you want to walk shore, if you're walking in what you know is 1 or 2 feet of water and you go through, it's really not life hazard, because you're not going to go in over your head. You're going to get wet and cold, but you could slip and fall. Obviously, ice is slippery, and you get a little bit of dusting of snow on there. It's about as slippery as the thing you're going to find. So not only is falling through the ice a hazard, but falling down and striking your head or breaking an arm or something is also a hazard.
Yeah. So float coats when you're heading out on the ice, that sort of thing?
Float coats, I've always thought if you put on a life jacket because you think that things are bad, you probably, just don't go. You shouldn't have to put on a life jacket. Now, I like to ice fish as much as anybody, but, you check, you do your due diligence on checking the ice, making sure it's strong, and, I've never wore a life jacket on the ice for ice fishing because if that's the case, I'm not going out there.
Period.
No, the fish will still be there next week. Let the ice build up a little bit.
I like that attitude. So we're going to touch on some fire safety tips, and I know I'd mentioned before you hit the airwaves about candles. A lot of people like to use candles. When I was a kid, we had candles on our Christmas tree, but
that's a big no-no.
I can only remember a couple of years, and then we quit doing that.
My favorite candle right now has a battery or plugs in. It's got a little LED. So I'm not a fan of candles. Never have been. I've seen the damage that results from candles. Whether it's careless use of them or just because it's another open flame in a structure that something can go wrong with. One that comes to mind a bunch of years ago is cats in candles. Those little flames sit there and flicker, and cats are pretty intrigued by that, so they're pawing at them and patting at them, and they either hit them, burn themselves, or knock the candle over, and nothing good comes of a candle getting tipped over.
Many years ago, I remember a fire here where individual forgot to put the candles out, left the house, and we had a major fire in the house.
Pretty easy. It's a lot like cooking. You should never leave flames, open flames like cooking or candles unattended. You know, if you're there, we talked earlier about having candles at church. Well, typically candles burn at church are when people are around, so if something goes wrong, you can react to it quickly and take care of the situation.
Right, because I know I had mentioned to you that I know a number of communities have ordinances that don't allow candles even in church.
Sure, it's, you know, I think it goes back to there's typically a lot of people in a building, and you want to limit the possibility of a fire, and candles burning can cause a fire.
Is there a difference, artificial versus real trees, in terms of fires?
Yep, artificial trees. Most artificial trees are treated, and they're just made of different stuff. They still will burn. About everything in the world will burn, but other than sheetrock and, you know, some other, but even rock and molten rock. But live trees. I do a live tree every year. They take some extra care. You need to keep them in a good sturdy base that holds a couple days worth of water. You need to keep them watered. There's a couple rules of thumb on if the tree is getting old and dry. You know, it's been cut for a while. If the needles start falling off just randomly, you'll always lose some, because they do even when they're alive. But that's a good sign. Another thing I really look for is when you first get your tree and you make that clean cut on the bottom, and it'll suck up the water pretty quickly, and over the weeks it'll slowly not draw it up as fast, and once it really becomes stagnant and water's not going up in there, it's really getting dry and it needs to get out of your house.
What do you think, a month?
At the most, yeah. I think
would be the max, the month? I
think, you know, I wait a little bit longer. I haven't even put mine up yet, and that'll probably be this weekend, so not a big fan of having that in there, but I want it for the Christmas season. But a month is a long time. But you know, the trees are different, and if you get a good cut on the bottom and they're still drawing up water and the needles aren't falling off, you know, they can stick around. Also, a tree is just not going to spontaneously combust just sitting there because it's dry. It needs a ignition. It needs a candle or a light that it has a spark or an arc. So, you know, don't want to get too many people all jacked up over a tree that's been in there a long time. If you don't have the lights on, or if it's starting to get dry and you just don't turn the lights on, or you don't leave them on for very long, only when you're there. But they are a mini little bomb. If you've ever lit up a Christmas tree outside after you take it outside, or you throw it in a bonfire, it's instantaneous combustion, and that's why fires in homes that involve a Christmas tree are typically more deadly or more fatal to the people in that house, because it's such fast creation of smoke and the stuff that we can't breathe.
Yeah. I remember as a kid growing up that my folks used to put the Christmas tree up mid-December. It was December 15th typically that it went up, and it came down the 2nd of January.
Yeah, that's about the pace that we're on. I don't like to leave it up too long. I also don't leave the lights on when you're not there. You know, we'll have them on when we're around, but overnight, you put them on a timer, put them on something that they shut off. They don't need to be on when there's nobody around to enjoy them. You
don't see a lot of people doing that, though, Dusty.
Yeah, you go by at some times of days, and there's lights on all the time. That leads to further drying out, and the more they're on, the higher possibility of one having an issue. Now, again, we don't have Christmas tree fires weekly or daily by no means, but they do happen across the United States, and we can do some things to limit that. You want to err on the side of safety. Correct. Err maybe not be the right word, but caution on the side of safety. You know, and another thing when it comes to trees, you know, when you first put up your trees, you don't have the presents under them. They don't take up a lot of space, and that's depending on the size of the tree. But as the season goes on and presents start to fall out from underneath them, another word of caution is to not allow that to block any paths of exits on the way out, depending on where your tree is. You definitely don't want it to be in front of a door or near a hallway. And it seems common sense, but you get into some apartments or some different places where the tree and or the presents can hamper your exit. No, even a small house, you know, there's not a lot of room. Right. The tree takes up some room, and the presents under the tree take up room. Yep. As they spill out, you start to see that, or the day of Christmas when everybody brings presents over, all of a sudden there's a lot of them. Now, I know that's temporary, and they'll go away pretty quickly, but that's a word of caution. I remember my folks used to remember the big bulbs
Christmas light.
Yep.
Big bulbs. And then my folks got the little bulbs, and now it's LED lights, right?
Yeah, LEDs are very common, and I like LEDs. They don't generate the heat that even any of the incandescent type older bulbs do. So that's pretty big when you have them on a tree or on anything that is combustible. That the lesser the heat that comes from those lights, the lesser chance of a fire starting.
Dustin Dienst is fire chief here in the city of Faribault. He's giving us some safety tips this morning. We touched on ice safety. We've touched a little bit on fire safety. I know you have some notes there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we hit on another thing that we see a fair amount at this time of the year is cheaters, and you got all these decorations and Christmas lights, and you need a place to plug them in. And we don't have a lot of places to plug in all the stuff, so you overload some cheaters or some of those surge strips. Be careful, because those things are only made to carry so much electricity, and if they get overloaded, they create heat. And so depending on where those are, you have to watch. You don't want to overload. Don't ever plug one surge strip into another just to create spots to plug in. Again, goes back to the beauty of LEDs. They don't draw a lot of juice, so they don't tend to heat up wiring or outlets, plugins that often. So
I'm hearing an endorsement for LEDs.
Another endorsement for LEDs. Yes.
And you don't have to replace them as often, supposedly, too.
Well, I don't have a lot of them yet, and they haven't been around a long time. But yeah, they're not built like incandescent with that delicate little filament that can break, in the wind outside, or when you throw them in the box and chuck them up in the attic. But
that's another thing you said about the attic. Lots of people just throw a lot of stuff up in the attic. Yeah,
it gets into the combustible load in your house. Having lots of stuff, quote unquote stuff, is a fire hazard in more than one way. It's not only allows the fire to burn hotter and quicker, but it can also, if it get to be enough stuff where it hampers your exit out, that's one of the reasons we hear that elderly people typically have a higher death rate in house fires. And one of them is they have a lot of stuff and they're not as agile or mobile to get out around stuff or through exits that are partially blocked.
And I know we talk about it all the time. There's nothing wrong with repeating it. People need to have an escape plan should there be a fire. I don't know how many people actually have them, but we should have them.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been in a house where you see an actual escape plan that's mounted to the wall, like you'll see in schools and in
motels
businesses.
And hotels. Yeah,
but
that's required there, though.
Yeah, but it's because it's not somewhere you're at a lot. Your home you're at a lot. So mentally you can have your escape route, but you have to once in a while just think about that. If I was sitting here watching this show and something happened, how do I get out of this room?
You'd throw a chair through that window behind us.
Yep. I'd go right out and right behind you.
And you dive right into the parking lot below.
Well, you don't go jumping out. You would crawl out safely, or if you couldn't jump because it's too high up, you get the fire department's attention when they get there. And
adrenaline's an amazing thing, Dusty.
Yeah, but so is gravity.
You can almost fly like Superman if you're scared enough. Fly out of there. But that's what I would do. I mean, if there's a fire, this board right in front of me caught on fire, I'd probably just throw a chair through that window and head out the window.
That's the two ways about every room that you're in. If you're in a room that doesn't have two ways out, you got to think what you're doing in that room. You shouldn't be in that room very long. You'll see that a lot in basements. They have a lot of the small windows. They were really never meant for a long occupancy of being down there. You shouldn't be sleeping down there unless you have the bigger windows that you can actually fit through and get out. So there's a lot of that thought and design goes into buildings and homes when they're built.
I think we've touched on this before, too. I had this little fire extinguisher, which was my kitchen fire extinguisher. I think you told me it's too small. It's not going to really do anything.
Well, it depends on the fire. It depends on the size of the waste paper basket that it's in. Again, if it's a cooking fire, I don't encourage using an extinguisher because there's pressure there, and it'll just blow the grease or the liquid that's on fire.
Right.
So that's really, there are some guidelines on what size of extinguisher you need. We know for like boats and for equipment, tractors or cars, there's a certain size. I guess having one is a good thing. If it's so big that you can't move it, lift it, carry it, then it's not a good thing. It's not worth using.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose.
It was a great segue. I don't know if we've heard about or advertised a lot, but the Kidde fire extinguisher recall, it's huge. You might want to Google or go on the Kidde website and look at it. If you have an extinguisher, and I think it dates back to extinguishers even made in the 70s and 80s, goes way back. I know the one in my boat qualifies for this recall. It has a plastic handle on it, and those handles are failing, so there's a huge recall on them. You go on the website, it tells you what to do. One of our fire trucks had the recalled extinguisher on it. You take a picture of it, you send it to them, they send you another one with a prepaid label to send back the one you have. So I would encourage people that have extinguishers that are Kidde to go onto that website and look into that more. Boats, vehicles, you name it. And they're a big maker of extinguishers. So.
Yeah, I also remember as a kid, when I was young anyway, I know Dad had a fire extinguisher in the car, in the vehicle. I don't know if it was required, if it was part of the vehicle at that time or what. But.
Yeah, you see them on equipment. We see them. I don't think they're real common in passenger vehicles. They have a limited usage in a passenger vehicle. You know, hopefully you have insurance on your vehicle. And my recommendation is just get out of the vehicle, and if it burns up, and get a different one. There are some, like farm implements. They come in commercial vehicles where employees are in them, and that is a safety.
And that may be why we had that, because I know Dad had the milk truck, had to have a fire extinguisher in there, so he probably just threw it in the car.
Yeah, he was used to them, and he felt comfortable with them, and he knew how to use them. So we don't. They're not common in passenger vehicles, but.
Some days the show isn't long enough. We only have a few minutes left here, so do we touch on all the notes that you have written down there, Dusty?
I think so. I would like to talk about heaters a little bit. Sure. Obviously, it's getting cold, and your furnace is a very safe piece of equipment that is installed by professionals, and it's there. But we talk about space heaters, and they can be a problem. So the key thing to space heaters, there's a couple key things, is plugging them into an electrical outlet that'll handle that load, because they do draw a lot of electricity. And then even bigger than that, is where you put them. They need to be in the middle of an area. They should not have anything combustible within 3 feet of them. So if you put them under a desk, if you put them alongside a wall, typically they like to put them alongside a wall because that's where the outlet is, and then they're not in the way of people tripping over them or in the way. But if that wall is made of sheetrock, that's fine. But if it's got curtains hanging there, or there's some other type of combustible material, seems like common sense, but we see it a lot. Another thing we see with those is tipping over. A lot of them have a shutoff now when they tip over, but you're hoping that shutoff works. So making sure they're in an area where they don't tip over, and if they do tip over, it's not onto something combustible.
Yeah, I got one they claim won't tip over. But anything will tip over.
Everything will tip over. So
I got a kick out of that when I read it on the box.
Yeah.
If you trip over it, and it'll come with you.
Pets, kids, human beings, they do things that are unexplainable sometimes.
All right, fireplace safety.
Yep, keep them clean, keep them attended. Don't burn paper in there. That's a big one, especially with Christmas coming up, and it seems like a good place to get rid of some wrapping material and just throw it in there. But it gets too hot, so do not burn wrapping paper or other papers in your fireplace in big mass quantities. I know sometimes they're used to get it started, but it's not a place to dispose of paper. Matches,
lighters. I know one of the times recently when you were on, you talked about a fire where, there were some matches or something maybe it was a lighter in the drawer in the kitchen.
Well, that was that back to the
Irish fire
with the battery and the steel wool?
Oh, it was a battery. That was it, yeah.
Yeah, 9-volt batteries and steel wool are quite an experiment that if you ever want to see what happens, do it outside. But keep 9-volt battery ends covered. Matches and lighters should never be left laying around, especially if there's children around. They need to be put up somewhere where they can't get a hold of them. That's not as huge. There's less smokers in the world, so you don't see it huge, but they're still out there, and they're used for lots of different things, not only smoking. So.
Man, you quite often hear about a fire that started by someone smoking in bed, which wow.
Yeah, they're getting less and less.
Right.
I think education and less smokers, but yeah, there's a whole series typically of things leading up to that.
Never, I got this off your website, says never store gasoline containers in your home, which seems commonsensical again, but not bad to remind people.
Correct. Some people that have garages or outbuildings just take that for granted that's where they'd keep them, but if people don't have that, where are they going to put it? We definitely don't put those inside, or they're giving off fumes. They add to the fire load. Also, I don't recommend having 20-pound LP cylinders in your house either. They can be out in the cold. That's not going to affect them. Don't bring them in. Don't be using them in your house for cooking or grilling. Don't be doing that in the garage. That stuff is meant to be outdoors.
You found people that have done that, really?
Yes. I think people grill in their garage more than we know because we just don't see it.
No, I know. And somebody suggested that to me one day. I was picking up some meat at the store or something, and I said, well, if it's not too cold, I'm going to grill today. They said, well, just go in your garage. I said, no.
Well,
I'm not going to go in my garage.
It can be done safely. I don't encourage it, but it's just like any cooking fire, any cooking, if you attend it and you're always watching it. But I'm not encouraging that, but it happens, and again, we don't go on those fires weekly or daily from that.
We plumb run out of time.
We need to make this show longer.
I know that. This is one of those days when we could have done that. Do you think we touched on everything? Or pretty much
we never touch on everything, but I think we touched on a lot of the highlights and the things that we need to at this time of the year.
The only other thing, and I've only got 20 seconds on your website, make sure your emergency, your address is well lighted so people can find your home.
Make sure it doesn't blend in. If we have to go there at night, we need to be able to see those numbers.
For sure. Well, thanks, Dusty. If I don't see you, have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, you guys all have a Merry Christmas, too.
Yeah.